Welcome back to Zuko Builds. Today we're finishing this table build. Last week I built the tabletop completely out of scrap wood. This week, or today, we're making the base. I wanted to keep the theme of the square bases like the bench and the chair builds. If you haven't watched those videos yet, be sure to check those out. So I kept the same style but just made it a base for a table. It's gonna be a fun build today. Let's hop right into it. For the base, I'll be making this completely out of 2x4s. Thankfully I had a couple lying around, but I did have to purchase a third one. So in total I built this base for about $6. I'll be leaving most dimensions out of this because that'll vary depending on the size of your tabletop, but you'll need 4 cuts for the sides of the base, 4 cuts for the top and bottom to essentially make a rectangle, and 2 cuts for the stretchers. You'll have 1 on the top of the base and 1 on the bottom. As I said, you'll have 4 pieces for the sides, which will be the height, 4 pieces for the top and bottom, which will be the width, and 2 stretchers that'll run across the length. Now I'm just going to clean up one edge and then rip them all down to 3 inches. So I'll take all of my pieces over to my table saw, clean up one edge, then move my fence over to 3 inches and rip them all down to their final width. And this little cutoff looks like I guess you can say a prison shank. So I gotta work on my form a little bit. Yeah. Wacha, wah. Now that I know my form is impeccable, I'll go ahead and sand everything before assembling it. Don't be a weirdo that sands after they assemble. It's just way harder that way. Sand everything and then put it together. Makes your life so much easier. And while we're watching this tedious process, I'll just say thank you to everybody watching the videos, liking the videos, commenting. You guys really do help the channel grow. So thank you guys so much. To attach the stretchers to the base, I'll be using half lap joints, so I'll take the tops and bottom pieces, which will be the width, finding the center, and measuring out 3 inches because that's what I ripped these 2x4s down to. And if you don't know how to cut half laps yet, I have a few videos on my channel teaching you guys how to do this with different tools. I'll go ahead and leave a card on the top right corner on one of those videos. And since these are all going to be in the same location, I just went ahead and made the marks on one of my pieces. I'll make sure all of them are flush and carry that line through with a combination square. Now I can go ahead and cut these half laps out, and I'm using the Jonathan Katz Moses stop block to help align the first cut on all of my pieces. Then I can just scoot my piece over and hogging out all of the material to the other line. Note that I did carry the line over to the edge just so I can see it, and make sure you set your blade to half of the thickness, which I think is why they call it, what was it called? A half lap joint. Huh, that makes sense. And I always stop a little bit shy of that next mark just to make sure that I can sneak up on that perfect fit. Like they say, you can always cut more, but you can't ever cut less. And if you followed along till this point, you should have 4 perfect half lap joints. Now all we have to do is continue the process with the runners, but this side's a little bit easier. You'll see why. So I say this side's a little bit easier because you just have to make 1 mark. You're measuring the width of whatever material you're using from the end, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to find the center and then measure out whatever width you're using. Once again, I carried that mark over to the edge. I'll line up that first cut, set up my stop block, and then just hog out the material all the way through the end. Wrong. So this is what your base will end up looking like. You just want to make sure that the pieces with the half flaps are on the inside, and I'll just be using butt joints with glue and screws. This part's pretty straightforward, just get a little bit of glue on there and I'll be using corner clamps to hold everything in place while I drill some pilot holes and fasten my screws. I'm always adamant about double checking everything with the square before you start fastening your screws. I'll put in one screw, maybe two, double check again with the square, and move on to the other side. It's a lot easier doing it now rather than when everything's already assembled and the glue might have cured a little bit. So just keep checking with your square, making sure everything is 90. Now this is what the base will eventually look like. I just have the stretcher clamped in place. To attach the stretcher, I'll just be adding some glue and screws right at the half lap. Before finishing this whole project, I just want to make sure that the base came out nice and sturdy and exactly how I wanted it. So I'll attach it to the tabletop I made last week. If you haven't watched that video yet, check it out. It's a cool little scrap video I made. And if it came out the way I liked it, I'll take everything apart, finish it, and then final assembly after that. Let's flip it over, make sure everything is nice and stable, there's no wobbles, and if we're good, let's move on. Once everything is finished, I will be adding these little tabletop fasteners. I'll probably do that at the end of everything, so I just wanted to give you a quick peek. You can get these anywhere. Wow. That's today's build, guys. Like I said, I'm keeping the theme of the square bases like the bench and the chairs, so that's what I went ahead and did. It's a pretty straightforward and simple build. The only thing that might get a little complicated are the half lap joints. But I have multiple videos on how to accomplish that with different tools, so be sure to check those out. And if you want to watch the video of how I made this tabletop completely out of scrap wood that I was going to use for firewood, be sure to check that out. That was last week. I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. I might paint the base black to kind of give it an industrial look, and then I'll finish the tabletop the same color as the benches and chairs. If you want to see the pictures of the final product, be sure to check out Instagram at Zuko Builds. Hit that like button if you liked the video, comment down below what you thought about it, and subscribe if you're not already. See you guys next week.